Well, hi, everyone. My computer just dinged. We are at the top of the hour on my public Facebook page, and I'm here with Coach Diana, and we're going to talk about how to live in the truth when the truth is ugly and hard, which may be your reality today. In fact, it's our nation's reality as we face this terrible school shooting in Tennessee. One of our coaches has connections with one of the families whose child died. And so it's really hits home here. But if you are here with us, could you please give us a shout out and let us know that we have made it through the cyber world security and gotten onto Facebook and YouTube, and let us know that we are live and we are here. And if you could just give us a shout out and say, hi, we're here. That really gives us comfort that we're not just talking to the wind. Thank you so much, Sherry. Appreciate you in doing that. It's a very weird phenomena, probably because I've lived in the age where this wasn't happening as easily as it happens now, to just hop on a computer and talk to real people in real time that you can't really see all over the world. So thank you so much that you're here. Thank you so much.
We are here.
We are here in all caps. Yay. Hello from Sacramento. Hi from YouTube. Welcome. Welcome. We're so glad you're here. And so Coach Diana and I were talking prior to our conversation about how hard it is to face the truth when it's ugly and hard. And many of us are living in ugly and hard in maybe non-personal ways. Our world is turning into ugly and hard in many ways, with the fears of the economy, fears of war, fears of political unrest, fear of what our children are learning in school, fears of our children's safety in school. It's really easy to just live in either fear or to move into pretend. Like, we're just going to pretend nothing's wrong and everything's fine and we're good. And how do we live in reality? How do we live in truth when that truth, at least some of that truth, is ugly and hard? And I think that's what we're going to be talking about today. And I'd like to start by just asking some of you, have you found a way that you can do that well? Have you found a way that you can do that well? And what I mean by well, it doesn't mean that you feel wonderful. It means that you feel stable, that you feel steady, that you can handle living in reality when it's hard. And if you found a way that you can do that, please put it in the chat. We're going to share some ways that we've done that and ways that we hope you can learn to do that if you don't do that well. Because our world is really going to be probably harder and harder as we move on in history, at least for this season. And so as I read my Bible, I see seasons of really, really hard for the Israelites and for the people of God, and seasons of not so hard, but this may be one of our seasons of hard, and ugly. So tell us, what do you do? Anything that you do to face hard? Anybody facing hard right now? Anybody facing ugly? We have somebody here from Spain. I'm so happy you're here. You're on a different time zone. It's late afternoon. I was just in Paris a couple of weeks ago with my granddaughter and loved it. But I've only spent a few days in Spain, Barcelona, on a cruise ship on the way, somewhere else, but I would love to go back. So yeah. So Diana says, my mind is blocked when I face truth. I cannot, I'm not sure I can't, something along hide. I cannot hide. My mind is blocked. What's it blocked from? Because sometimes when we're facing hard, our mind is blocked from anything else that might be good. There might be other wonderful, like the sun might be shining, but we have bad news and we can't even notice that the sun is shining because we're living in some other reality of hard. Linda says, I try to be thankful in all things, but it is hard. Yeah. And I love that you said it in the right way. Because I remember, and I've shared this before, but I was speaking at an event and the lady helping me at my book table said, I'm going through hard right now. I just want you to know that my son was killed in a motorcycle accident. Mm-hmm. And I thought, oh my gosh. And she goes, and it's my only child. And so here's this woman who is a divorcee. Her only child is killed in a motorcycle accident, her only son. And I said, how you doing? And she said, I can't be thankful for all things, but I have learned to be thankful in all things. And I said, tell me more. And she said, I'm not thankful for the motorcycle accident. I'm not thankful for my son that died. I'm thankful that I have a son, but I'm not thankful that he died. But I am thankful in this event that I've had so many Christian friends reach out to me. I'm thankful that he didn't suffer. He died instantly. I'm thankful that he was doing something he loved. He loved riding his motorcycle fast. I'm thankful that he knew Jesus and he's in heaven and I'll see him again. So she was kind of straddling this dilemma of ugly hard. My son was killed in a motorcycle accident and God let that happen. That's an ugly hard to live in, that reality. And there were some things that she could focus on that gave her some measure of peace, things that she could be thankful for. And that is where God tells us to learn to be thankful in all things, because some things are pretty darn hard and pretty darn ugly. Yeah. Sophia says, when life is hard, the hard life, I want a soft life. I want a softer life. Yeah. Debbie says, when things are hard, I practice living in big. I maintain healthy boundaries. I walk in integrity, which means I know my values and I walk in them. I don't just talk about them. I am generous with grace toward other people, believing they're doing the best they can with what they know, even if this person who seems so difficult. That's great wisdom, Debbie. Thank you so much for sharing it. Natalia says, my greatest struggle is to not disassociate. I find it gets me through the hard times without reflection of it. However, I do not want to go that way. Just feels like survival mode tactic. Yeah, Diana, do you have anything to say about that?
Well, I kind of would like to just comment on the example that you gave of the woman that you met. You know, we talked about what she said to you was that she knows how to do hard, or well, she's doing hard and she's choosing to do it and she's choosing to be thankful. That's not the first thing I would think about. You know what I mean? I kind of would cave into my feelings a bit and I think I would grovel. You know what I mean? And so I think the point I wanted to just highlight is that was an intentional choice. And you know how the Bible says to give thanks in all things. Wow, that's doing hard, isn't it?
And I think I'd like to highlight just something you said, because hard isn't a choice. Hard isn't often, I mean, sometimes it's a choice because we intentionally choose to do something hard, but when hard happens to us, okay, when life is ugly, when one of our kids is in that school shooting, when life is hard and it's ugly and it happens to us, when you catch your husband watching porn, or he confesses to an affair, or your marriage is destructive, or your children have cut themselves off from you, or whatever is hard for your life, that's not a choice. But Diana's used a word that's very powerful, because when we feel like victims of something that was hard, we got cancer, we got divorced, we got cheated on, lied to, betrayed, we got hurt in some way, we often lose sight that we still have choices. Like this woman chose to be thankful in some things about hard. Or Nathalia saying, I'm choosing to not disassociate. That's my go-to pattern from childhood, and maybe it served you well. It probably did in childhood. To disassociate means I just kind of check out. I just shut down. I'm not there. All right. And you don't want to do that in hard, because then you lose your power to make choices, the good choices, especially. You revert to habits of whatever your body's going to do. Right. And so she's choosing not to do that. And that's another layer of hard for her. But she's saying, I want to choose that, because even though the other gets me through, I'm not able to grow from that, because it's just a survival tactic. And that's what it is. And sometimes we need to do that if we're in a survival tactic situation. But hard isn't always survival. Hard is just hard. And we don't like it, but we have to learn to make some choices in it. And one of the choices that the person earlier, I think it was Debbie, said is, I can choose to focus on the things that I'm grateful for, even in it. Like, I'm grateful that my son didn't suffer when he was killed in a motorcycle accident. I would find it hard to focus on that. I would be like, God, why'd you do this to me? My only son, right? I'd be focused on that channel. And yet she chose to switch channels for a bit.
And I would think it would be very normal for her in that moment where she found that out to be a bit dissociative, you know what I mean? And to shut down a bit, but then to choose to come awake to that reality and to step through it intentionally and where she wants to be with it, even as Natalia is saying.
Yeah, and Debbie is also saying, I'm choosing to practice my boundaries. I'm choosing to practice my values. I'm choosing to look for the good in the situation, even though it's hard. And so those are parts. Yesterday we talked a lot about God's will, and God's will is for you to mature. So from a child mind and a child's way of being, which might disassociate, might throw a temper tantrum, might wah, wah, wah. That's what children do. He's calling us to mature. That's God's will. And even in hard, like that's what's used actually to mature us. And let me just give you some real practical examples. When I was in school, I've already said that math is not my strong suit. So when math got hard for me was in the tricky word problems. Like the figures I could do. I could understand math. I could understand addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, fraction. I could understand all that. But when you actually had to put it into a real life situation, like a locomotive is traveling at 25 miles an hour and it makes 3 stops in 15 minutes. And what time does it arrive at the station? I'm like, I don't know. Like, I don't know how to take all that math that I know conceptually and put it into real life locomotive time, right? And so that's what God sort of does with us sometimes, is that we're all spiritually thinking we're mature, and then he puts us into a word problem situation where, how do I do this? I don't know. How does scripture really apply here? I don't know. How do I live my values? How do I give thanks in all things? How do I learn to manage my emotions? Isn't that part of our maturity? That's how we put it into practice. How do we forgive someone if we never have anybody to forgive? And we only have to forgive when it's hard, right? Forgiveness is hard because something happened that was hard. Ellen says, I have learned to focus on details that I am thankful for. It tends to soften the hard stuff that you have no control over. Like I'm thankful to have my car instead of walking to the grocery store. I'm thankful it's warmer today. I'm thankful not to have an earache. I'm thankful my legs are working today. I'm thankful for my friend that reached out on text and chatted a few minutes today. Seeing the Lord's hand in everything, his love and provision. Thank you, Nicole, for that. I love that. And thank you, Ellen, for your comment. Ren Mom says, I think this is really true. The truth about yourself might be the hardest to admit. Yeah. And Sophia says, hard life makes me bitter, but I want to be better while going through the hard refining process. Yeah. So you guys are nailing it. Some really wise tips about hard is that if we refuse to face hard, we're not going to grow. Like if I said, oh, I'm not doing those math problems. I can't do it. It's too hard. If I refuse to do them, if I refuse to struggle through the hard and even get it wrong and then learn from the wrong to learn to get it right, I'm not going to mature in my ability to solve math problems, right? I'm just not going to mature. When my daughter was taking piano lessons, she had a decision to make. And after 2 years of piano lessons, they were getting hard. She was having to play complicated pieces and she was going to have to practice an hour a day. And did she want to learn to play the piano or not? Because it was harder. And she was going to have to struggle through hard in order to master a skill level that she wanted and mature in her piano playing. Any athlete has to go through hard seasons. I'm learning to paint. Some of you have commented about the picture. So I'm learning to paint. I'm painting my first picture of an old woman with wrinkles. So I've tended to focus on young, attractive women because they're easier to paint. And now I'm working on an old, wrinkled lady, and I just started her last night. So it's hard. It's like, oh my gosh, how do you do wrinkles? I don't know how to do wrinkles. I know how to get wrinkles, but I don't know how to paint wrinkles. And so this is hard. But we're not going to mature unless we push through. And these are metaphors, because I'm not crying while I'm painting, although sometimes when it turns into the ugly stage, I'm crying. But we can't grow if we don't do hard. I mean, you don't lift weights with styrofoam, right? We lift with heavy weights if we want to grow muscles. And so hard is part of maturing. So yesterday's Facebook Live, if you didn't watch it, we talked about how do I know I'm in God's will, especially if I'm married and it's hard. Maybe I married the wrong guy. That was very specific. Today, I'm going through hard, whatever it is. And could it still be God's will to be used to mature me? And if it wasn't God's will that this happened, it's not God's will that someone watches porn for sure. It's not God's will that your husband cheats on you. That was not God's will. But if Satan seeks to destroy him, understand he just seeks to destroy you too, and your children, and your relationship. Now you can't fix all that by yourself, but you can keep your side of the street clean. So how do you do that kind of hard? How do you do that kind of hard in a healthy way? How do you grow through that kind of hard? How do you face that kind of hard when your husband's abusive and destructive and he misuses the scriptures, that's the audience I tend to attract. So that's why I'm using those examples. But it might be you. And this is my public Facebook page. So if you want to make a comment or ask a question, I have another link for you to go to if I can find it now. So it's leslievernick.com/question/. You can put your question in the chat and we'll answer it. But if you want to ask it more privately because your name is on my public Facebook page and you don't want to ask a question, you can go to leslievernick.com/question/. And while you're doing that, for those of you who are here in a marriage that is destructive, I'm going to be doing a totally private free workshop in about 2 weeks. It's going to be on April 13th. I've just put a notice up on the Facebook page for you. It's going to be on April 13th. And if you would like to attend, it's going to be how long should you keep trying to turn a hard marriage into a better, healthy marriage? How long do you keep trying? Keep your side of the street clean, but you still have a marriage here. And it might be going south because you can't fix his side of the street, right? You can only fix your side of the street. And so how long do you keep trying? And if he is changing, how will you know the change is real? So I'm going to be doing an hour-long workshop 2 times that day live. It'll be on a private site so we can ask questions and we can have a conversation about it afterwards for about an hour. So it'll be about a 2-hour time commitment, maybe 2.5 hours if you really want to stay longer. And I would really encourage you to sign up, show up, because this will really, really help you. This will really, really help you. If you're in that situation, that kind of hard right now, that you don't know what's happening with your marriage. You don't know if your marriage is going to make it. You're afraid to face reality. It's hard. What if I get divorced? That's not what I want. I never wanted that. How do I do this? I have no idea. Come to this workshop because we will talk about how long do you keep trying to fix this, especially when he's not trying to fix it. But even if he is trying to fix it, how do you know what you're doing to fix it is really working? And what are the signs that you're on the road to repair and not just on the road to another cycle of the same old? And I'm going to unpack all that for you in the workshop. And we want to do it on a private site so that you don't have to worry about what you say on Facebook. It's not going to be on Facebook. It'll be on a site called Webinar Jam. And that's why you have to sign up, because we have to email you a link for the workshop and a link to download your workbook to take notes for yourself. So if that's your situation and you really want some specific help with that, please, please, please do sign up for that workshop. Okay. So I just encourage you to do that. So let's, if you have any questions, put them in the thing that I gave you or put them in the chat. But let's go back to talking. Diana, let's talk about the first thing, that we have feelings. And when life is hard, we feel feelings. We feel angry. Somebody mentioned bitter. We feel hurt. We feel depressed. We feel despair. How might we manage the intensity of those emotions in a healthy way?
Well, we've all experienced this, haven't we? And I think the first thing I think about is to notice that I'm in an intense emotion. And when I'm noticing that I'm in an intense emotion, I'm reflecting on what I'm experiencing. And I'm able to reflect rather than react. So I've made some decisions, and sometimes you get those notices in the mail, they turned you over to collections, and sometimes they're false. I can remember when I was younger, I'd get so hot, and I'd get on the phone right away. Well, that's what I mean about not reacting in the moment, right? I don't have to respond to my feelings in the moment or feel overwhelmed by them. I can just notice, and I can be with my experience and just feel what I'm feeling without allowing them to overwhelm my choices and my behavior. And I talk to myself about my feelings. I'm in a season in my life where I've lost people, and that's hard. They were some of my go-to people. And so when those emotions arise, you kind of coach yourself. Yeah, you're feeling lonely. I get it. You miss her. You miss him, whatever that means. And so rather than allowing the feelings to overtake you, sometimes it's going for a walk. During a season where I had some cortisol issues with anxiety, I had a routine. And as you were talking about how we tell ourselves the story, I would get up in the morning, even though I was feeling anxiety, and I would look at the sky and say, it's a brand new day. Coaching yourself through those things.
Yeah. And I think anger is the most tempting one when we're in that kind of situation, especially if it's a marital issue with betrayal and all those kind of things. Anger is the hardest one to keep control of, because we feel this rage, like that. And we have a hard time with that. Things I do when I feel that kind of rage is I break pencils. Like I literally will break them, because there's something physically about breaking something that feels good, but I don't mind breaking pencils. I want to break my dishes or something. Sometimes I bite pencils really hard because there's just such a force of anger inside your body that needs some sort of release. I might, do like an exercise routine, not turn anything on officially, but just, like pretend like I'm punching, just to wear out that intense. I want to harm someone when I'm that angry at someone who harmed me. I want to pay back evil for evil, and that's my flesh. And so I'm aware of that, and I don't want that part of me to act out in ways that would embarrass me or make me feel bad later. And so I'm trying to work off some of that energy of that anger that's stirred up in my body. And so by doing something physical that can help me kind of dissipate some of that extra energy can really help. I remember a woman who caught her husband in porn, and she took his laptop and she smashed it, and she took his phone and she smashed it. Another woman took her wedding ring off, and she had a big diamond. I think she was a wealthy woman. She took her wedding ring off in a fit of rage, and she threw it down the toilet and flushed it in front of her husband. Well, that's just plain stupid tax. I mean, you have to pay a lot of money to fix all that, right? And she, even if she got divorced from her husband, that wedding ring was probably worth $10,000 to $20,000 that she could have used for a down payment on a house. So for you to let your anger do things that both make you look immature and crazy and also cost you financially is just not wise. But you have this feeling inside of you. And so Diana is right. Notice, pay attention. Whoa, I'm about to kill someone, or I'm about to feel like I might. What do I do with that intensity of emotion? Take care of you. Notice that you're there. You're at the edge. Doesn't mean that gives you license to go act out on somebody any more than you would want them to act out on you when they're feeling that kind of anger. Take care of you so that you don't act out. You're aware, and you might need to set a boundary on yourself. The psalmist in Psalm 39 says, I will put a muzzle on my mouth as long as the wicked are in my presence. That's how hot he was. And he said, the more I thought about it, the hotter I got. And so we want to be real about the reality of our emotions. They can get the best of us. And sometimes they do. I'm sure that the parents who had to face the death of their children yesterday, their emotions were right up front center. And it's okay to cry and to fall on the ground and to wail in sorrow over what happened, because our emotions are real. And Jesus had emotions. Even when Lazarus was dead and he knew he was going to raise him from the dead, he wept. And so we can feel our feelings in a mature way. It doesn't mean we just dab our eyes. We can sob and still be mature and healthy about it. I do want to make one comment about a comment in the chat real quickly before I forget. Sign up for the workshop. The workshop link is on the Conquer Workshop 413 Join Workshop. Charbert, you mentioned one of my gals signed me up for a wait list as they said it was full. What was the wait list was for Conquer, which is a different group. We're going to open Conquer at the workshop. So if you've been wanting to get into Conquer, which is our support group for women in destructive marriages, you can get in April 13th after the workshop. But the workshop is free to everybody, even if you don't join Conquer. If you're in this situation where you want to have the answers to how long do I keep trying and what do I do to know whether my husband's efforts are real efforts, or are they just whitewash? Are they just window dressing? Are they just temporary? How do I know the difference? What are the red flags to look for? I'm going to give all that to you totally for free. And then afterwards, if you think, hey, Conquer is an organization I'd like to join, I'd like to be in this group for support and some more information and education, that's totally open then. We only open Conquer twice a year. So you've been on the wait list for Conquer, but you haven't been on this list to join the workshop. So join the workshop, and then you will be invited to come into Conquer after the workshop if you so like. All right. Just wanted to clarify that so that she didn't think, oh, it's full, I can't get on, and other people think that you can't. The workshop is open to everybody. It's not full yet. We just opened the doors yesterday. So please sign up so that you can come. All right. What questions do you have on dealing with hard? Jennifer Fonda said, yes, work off that adrenaline. I can't find where to sign up for the April 13th workshop. Okay. So it's on the Facebook page, but in case you're just listening to this, go to leslievernick.com, which is just easy to remember, Leslie Vernick, which is my name.com/join workshop, all one word, join workshop. So go to leslievernick.com/join workshop. And then it'll give you a link where you can put your name and your email in there. And then that will give you the email on April 13th that says, we're starting in 15 minutes. Here's your link, so that you can show up. And we highly encourage you to show up. If you find these helpful, you will find the workshop 100% exponentially helpful for a couple of reasons. One is you're going to get tremendous information that you're not going to hear from other people, information that are in alignment with your Christian values, but also wise and sound, that tell you what God says about relationships, that some of them don't work because they take two to work, even marriage. Second of all, you're going to have a sense of community. Even here, you get this sense of community. I'm not alone. Oh my gosh, I didn't realize so many women had the same problem. That's kind of reassuring that you're not the only one who's being cheated on or lied to or abused, that you are not alone, and you have a sisterhood of women who are struggling with you, and you have a group of other women who are a little further along who can help you, who hold these same values about the sanctity of marriage and about the sanctity of God's word. And what does God's word say about this, after all? And third, you're going to have an opportunity live at the workshop to answer my questions privately, not privately like one-on-one, but privately without being on social media. You will be in a workshop space that's not social media connected, so that you can ask those questions without feeling like someone's going to know what you've asked. All right. So I hope you show up live. If you can't show up live, it's at noon Eastern time and 7:30. You will get a replay if you sign up. And it won't be a full replay because you won't get the chat and you won't get the Q&A. And it's an abbreviated thing. I don't do all the intro stuff and all that. We take all that out. So it's shorter, but you miss all the other community building and the support that you might need. And that's often just as important as the information. How many of you have gotten information and it's just gone, I never did it because I didn't have the support to do it. And I didn't exactly know how. Like my art class, I get support. I'm in a class. And if I make a boo-boo, I can show my picture and say, I'm stuck here. What do I do next? Right? It's much easier to get that support when you're with people who are doing the same thing you're doing. All right. So let's see if we have any questions. How do I grow and be mature to become a good friend, a good date, a good girlfriend, a good wife? How do we observe this in a man? How do you tell an immature person from a mature person, I think is the question, Diana. And then how do we grow to be a mature person?
How do we tell? In fact, Coach Elise and I were just talking about this as we're talking about our circles of relationship development. We start really by observing the other individual. One of the biggest things I think in maturity, Leslie, is to take in truth. We're talking about how to live in the truth, right? And I think a lot of times in relationships, we talked about this a little bit before, we have a perception of what someone's like. And if we lead with that perception rather than taking in new information about who that person is, we've already decided. And rather, we want to, like this person is asking, observe. I want to observe in relationship the qualities of maturity and the character of this individual. So we're observing so many things. But when we're talking about maturity and someone who's a good friend, we're asking those questions as we're observing. Are they faithful? Are they trustworthy? Is this a reciprocal relationship, right? And then we also want to exhibit those qualities and characteristics in friendship with the other. And it takes a while to really observe and to interact with other individuals and taking in information. And so it really means kind of being open to what you see, looking for those good qualities and also looking for red flags.
Yeah, I think some of the first steps of maturity are self-awareness and self-reflection. So children don't really reflect on themselves. They just live in the moment. They just do what they do. They blame everybody else for what's going wrong, right? So some of the first steps of maturity in psychological emotional health is self-reflection and self-awareness. So what we're teaching our children when we're teaching them potty training, for example, is self-awareness. So pay attention when your tummy has to go potty. You got to pay attention now, because it's not just going to come out and we're going to have a diaper there. We're going to have to hold it and go to the bathroom. And so we're teaching them self-awareness. Pay attention to what you feel in your body when your bladder's full, when you have to have a bowel movement, then you can tell mommy and we'll go to the toilet. So those are maturing kinds of things. But we haven't always learned maturing in our emotions. Pay attention when you start to feel angry. Pay attention when you have that little nickel in yourself that says, I'm not sure I can trust this person. Pay attention to reality, right? And so pay attention to what's going on inside of you. Your body is oftentimes a good warning sign that something's wrong and you're not paying attention. Either it's wrong with your conscience, you're violating your conscience, or someone else is violating you and you're just saying, oh, they don't mean it. We're just making excuses. Oh, they're really safe, when they're baring their teeth. Oh, he's not really a woman. He's a nice, handsome man with a good, nice car and a good job, but he treats me horrible and I'm not paying attention. So self-awareness and self-reflection. Why did I do what I did? Why do I feel the way I feel? What's going on in the moment? What's my part in it, instead of just blaming outward? And so we see immature people who are destructive in your world. And what do? They blame, they shame, they accuse, they attack. And when you try to give them feedback on their behavior, they are incapable or unwilling to self-reflect and to be self-aware. So those would be two things, because then that leads to greater depth of the ability to self-control. Like, I can't control my urine if I'm not aware that my bladder is full, right? I can't control my temper if I'm not aware that I'm getting worked up. I can't do anything about those things. And I can't self-correct. So if I'm not aware that I'm going in the wrong direction and I'm doing horrible things to wreck my marriage and it's my fault and I'm not reflecting on that, I'm just blaming you, well, then I can't make any positive self-corrections to do something different. So these self-maturing kinds of qualities are often shamed, especially in women in Christian circles. Like, oh, don't think about yourself. Oh, don't think too much about yourself. You're thinking too much about yourself. You need to die to yourself. And so these qualities of self-awareness, self-reflection, self-control, self-correction are sort of not talked about and not developed a lot of times. We're just supposed to be nice and giving and accommodating and, and therefore we're not fully maturing and being capable of having good relationships with people, right? So when we're a parent and we teach you hit your baby sister, well, it's her fault, she took my toy. And hey, but you hit your baby, you did that. We're giving them the opportunity to be aware. Oh, I made a choice to hit her when she took my toy. Not, I had no choice. She took my toy and I just have to hit her, right? We're helping them be self-aware. Hey, there's a pause here between what happened and what you did. And that's the building blocks of maturity. And so you'll learn in the workshop that I'm going to do, one of the red flags that you're going to look for is if your destructive husband is becoming more aware, more self-aware, right? We'll talk about that. How is he? Is he more self-aware when he bullies you? Oh my gosh, I'm sorry, I just bullied you. Or when he's raising his voice, or when he's not told you the truth. He's self-aware that if I keep doing that, that's going to wreck my marriage again. I got to stop that. Or is he just denying, covering, excuse making, blaming, which is what destructive people or unhealthy people who end up in destructive relationships do, right? And we want to teach you different, because God wants you. It is God's will for you to mature and grow into your full self.
I love what you said about the self and women knowing yourself and listening to yourself rather than deferring. And that's where maturity starts, right? Isn't it? From taking responsibility from the inside out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So here's some questions. I see some in the chat. Let me just see if I see them here. Yeah, there's a couple of questions in the chat that are not on my chat my question tracker. So Jessica, if you can go back and go get some of those, but let me just list some of the ones here. How do I speak kindly and lovingly at the same time clear with a man who texts, calls, shows interest, then disappears, then comes back again? How do I tell him it's okay to say hi every now and then, but it hurts and bothers me? We were in the middle of a conversation through text and he's gone and never says bye until he shows up again.
You want me to speak to that?
If you have an answer, yeah.
Well, yeah, my first thought about that is you say it. You just express what you're experiencing and you express what you're experiencing and watch for his response. Like, I don't like it when you just disappear and you don't come back for days. That really hurts my feelings. I'd like to continue this conversation, but that behavior is not okay with me.
Yeah, I agree. And you don't even have to be that vulnerable that it hurts your feelings. I think you can just say something a little bit more benign, like, hey, it feels very confusing. I thought we were friends and I asked you a question and I don't hear back. Not even, hey, I'm going out of town. I can't text you for a couple of days, but it's crickets for 2 weeks until I hear back from you. That's not okay for me. That doesn't feel like a friend. And see how he responds. See if he can take that feedback, going back to maturity, okay? So when you give someone feedback, not feedback that's ugly and harsh, but feedback. Hey, I don't like this. You're you're late every time we get together. I don't like that. I'm giving you feedback. That's not okay with me. And they say, oh, you're just too sensitive. Or, oh, you're so critical. Or they take that feedback and say, you know what? I have a hard time being on time. I am so sorry I'm late. Every time we set a time, I probably will be late. So just come late too, because I probably won't be there on time. So they're not necessarily accommodating you, but they are admitting, yes, I'm aware I have this problem of being late, right? And I'm probably not going to fix it because it's been a problem my whole life. So if you want to be a friend of mine, just adjust your schedule to come 15 minutes later after what we decided, right? And that can be a healthy relationship as long as you know their limitations or what they're willing to change and what they're not willing to change. And you're okay with living with that if you can, right? And so I think this is where honesty in relationships comes into play. I remember a friend criticizing me because I never sent her a birthday card. And I'm like, Fred, I don't even send my own children and, sisters and brothers birthday cards on time. And I don't even add my friends. That's not how I roll. I don't have time to send cards to everybody. I'm really busy. And if that's going to offend you, probably I'm not going to be a good friend to you then. Right. And so I think it's important in relationships to be aware of yourself, what I can do, what I can't do, what I'm willing to do, what I'm not willing to do, right? To make you happy, and state that. And if that's a deal breaker for you, okay. That's part of being honest with relationships. Mm-hmm. So I think you can just say it. Like Diana said, I reconnected with a man I used to date before. I got married. He said that he still likes me, but now he has commitments and children. On the other hand, he shows interest and says he likes me. How can I stop with this fantasy in my head? My counselor said that this is platonic love, and it hurts because I would really like to love a healthy and real way someone. I know life is not pink and Disney. So it sounds like you're struggling with maturity and immaturity, healthiness and unhealthiness. And you're in some counseling and she's trying to help you grow into healthiness. Paul says one of the ways that we grow into healthiness is we leave behind our childish ways, that we don't even want to pee in our pants anymore if we can help it, right? We don't want to do that anymore. When we're fully potty trained, it's not an option. It's not like, oh, I think I'll revert back to diapers. I just don't feel like worrying about that today. We don't do that, right? And so part of maturity is to let go of those childish fantasies, those childish ways, those ways of thinking, magical thinking. And, I'm going to have a Prince Charming and a hero to take care of me. And I think this is a lie for many women. And when life is hard in your marriage, and I'm going to talk about in your marriage, when life is hard in your marriage, the fantasy is, I just need to find another husband. I just need to get rid of this guy. And I'm going to say it crudely, get rid of this guy and find someone who will love me like I need to be loved, or take care of me like I need to be taken care of. That's a child talking. That's a child talking, not a fully grown adult woman. A fully grown adult woman will say, hey, I'd like to be in a relationship with this man. That's why I married him. If he doesn't want to be in a relationship with me that's mutual and respectful, what do I need to do to take care of me and my children? I might need to get a job. I might need to go back to school to be equipped to get a job. That's what an adult woman thinks. She doesn't think, I need to find another man to take care of me. Adults take care of themselves. Doesn't mean they don't marry. They do. And hopefully you can. But it's not for someone to take care of you because you're capable of taking care of you yourself. That's what an adult can do. Right? And so it's God's will that you mature. And so it might even be that this season in your life is for you to take some responsibility. Maybe your marriage isn't going to improve, but take some responsibility for you to mature so that if your marriage doesn't make it, you're not going to repeat the same mistake by looking for another man to take care of you, but you're going to be capable of taking care of you and your children because you've used this season of hard to grow. Any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I'm wondering what the next step would look like if I'm going to give up that fantasy and step into truth. And I think one of the tools really for me is I write myself statements. I'm notorious. I have a whole stack of index cards. So if you were to write yourself a statement, if you want to step into the truth and out of this fantasy, what does that sound like? What's the narrative you put in your mind? Like I'm a grown-up woman. I can take care of myself. I desire a man for companionship, but I don't need a man. And then, and stepping into the truth of this relationship, you have the details here. Is this really what you want moving forward? Someone who's not available, someone who doesn't kind of fit the bill really for who you are and how you long to live out your life. But you can't get to that if you're not willing to leave the fantasy and step into the truth of what you're noticing, what you're seeing, and that it might not be a good fit.
Okay, this is a question that we'll go to.
Okay.
I set a boundary with my husband to stop gambling. He has reduced the time and money he spends here and thinks that's enough. But he hides the activity, hides while participating, then says it's my fault he lies and should be able to tell me. I said if he wanted to change, he'd call me before he played while he was tempted. Any advice? I'll start while you're thinking about it. First of all, you cannot set a boundary on your husband's gambling. That's the problem. Okay? Because he's rebelling against that. He's sneaking and lying because he didn't agree to this boundary. You said it, right? So you said it and he complied, but he didn't really agree. It wasn't in his heart to stop the way you want him to stop. Okay? And so you have to accept that he wants to gamble still. And I'm not saying you have to like it any more than you would like having breast cancer. That's the hard, ugly truth. So your dilemma is your husband gambles and he doesn't think anything's wrong with it and you don't like it. And what's your problem with his problem? That's where you need to think. And what boundary do you need to set for your safety and your well-being if he gambles? Right? And this is affecting your marriage. Diana, what are your thoughts?
I think you said it all. He wants to be able to do what he wants to do. He's telling you the truth. I mean, he's going to do it regardless. And so then what are my options? What can I control? What can I control? And, do I want, what parameters will I put around a man who's doing this, spending my money?
Yeah. And you can't really put any parameters on him because he's an adult. He might not be a mature adult, but he's an adult, right? It's not like you're his mother. So here's what I would suggest that you think about saying to him. And I understand that you don't want to stop gambling as much as I want you to stop gambling. Is that right? That you'd still like to do that? How much gambling do you feel is okay and won't affect our finances? So maybe he would set a boundary like, hey, I think it's okay for me to spend $100 a week on gambling. And I don't think it'll affect our finances. That's my play money, and I want to play with it this way. You play with it by going to the spa, or you do it this way. I'm going to play with it this way, and I think that should be my choice. If that's cool with your finances and you have the money to do that, then maybe it's something that if he can stay in those boundaries, you can live with. because he's now setting the boundaries and he's living in those boundaries. If he says, I want to spend $100 a week and you're having trouble paying the rent and mortgage because he wants to spend $100 a week, I think this is where you need to say, that's not going to work for me because we don't have $100 a week of fun money for our family. I don't spend $100 a week on fun. That's not okay with me. And are you able to have a conversation where he can self-reflect, which is maturity, and say, you're right, that's sort of immature for me to expect. He won't say it this way, but kind of think to himself, that's sort of immature for me to expect that I can act like a child and you're to be the adult, and I can be like the sneaky child and you're the scolding adult, and I can go have my cake and eat it too because somehow you'll figure out how to pay the bills, right? So if that's the kind of man you're married to, all right, now you know. And I'm not saying you're going to like it. So now you got your mammogram. Now you know you have breast cancer. Okay. Now what's your next step? Now what's your next step? All right. So this information, wow, he is immature. He doesn't want to change. He has no intention of changing. He expects to be the adolescent boy in the family, and I'm the mama who takes care of everything. Not working for me. Now what are my boundaries? I'm not willing to do that. I'm not willing to live like that. I'm not willing to stay with a person who functions like a child and expects me to pick up all the pieces.
Yeah.
So now what are your options? And we'll talk a lot about that in the workshop. But this is the direction. It's not nagging and begging and threatening him to get his act together. Because if he has no heart to get his act together, how's that working? You can't make someone change. You know, he has to want that. Okay. Any other thoughts on that, Diana?
No, I like what you said. That's facing the hard truth, getting all the information you need. And then now what do I want to do with that information?
Yeah. And so we have a similar question about a husband who's an alcoholic. And I would say the same thing is, hey, your alcoholism is your problem.
Yeah.
But my problem with your problem is you're leaving vomit all over the floor. You're spending way too much money and we can't afford this. You're being cruel and abusive to the children when you're drinking. You're being mean. You're driving drunk and you're going to get a DUI and lose your job. What is your problem with his problem? And then talk to him about that and say, what are your boundaries? I won't drive with you when you drink. I won't give you access to extra money. I'm putting it in a separate account, all my money, because you spend it on alcohol and I'm not okay with that. I don't have enough money to pay it. What is your problem with his problem? And then deal with your problem because you can't fix his problem. All right. Here's another one. My husband has been very controlling. I finally told him, good for you. I am not interested in a relationship where I am being controlled, that I want different things from me now. I thought he would rage. He said that he understood. He hugged me and he has been nice for a couple of days. How do I know if it's genuine or another way to manipulate?
You don't until you test it out over time and wait to see if he really means it. And the other thing is, it's easy to say that you understand, and it's easy to give some affection, but the proof is in my behavior as I move forward. And I'm hoping for your sake that he really is getting it, but only time will tell.
Yeah. And so here's where your maturity. So and we talk a lot about this in our Conquer group, by doing your own work and starting to say, hey, that's not okay with me. Right? You started the ball rolling. Then we'll just take the best case scenario. He could self-reflect and say, oh, wow, I didn't realize I was so controlling. Of course, I can understand you don't like that. I won't do that. I want you to be you, right? So that's a good first interaction. By you changing, he was able to self-reflect and hopefully he's changing. He's nicer now, right? The test will come when you fall back into an old pattern. So he wants to control you. I don't want you to go to that women's retreat. Who's going to take care of the kids? Right? Or whatever he does to typically, I don't want you to get your hair cut. I like your hair long. Whatever he tends to do to control you will come back because we are creatures of habit. He's going to fall back into an old way, even if he doesn't want to. Right? And when you say, hey, that feels like I don't get a choice here. So you're going to speak up in that moment, not in a bullying, you're controlling kind of way, but just in a kind of a cutesy, winsome way. Hey, that feels a little controlling to me. Like I don't get a choice about how I want to wear my hair or where I want to go or what I think I need to do. And then he's giving a chance to self-reflect again. Oh yeah, that was that. And now we're here, and see how he handles that. And if he handles it, you're right. I'm going to fall back into those old ways because I do, and just remind me. That's a great sign because he's self-reflected and he heard you and he values what you had to say. And so that's great. But if he says, you know what, I am the husband in this family and God says that you're to submit to me and I am the authority and I don't want to control everything, but there's certain things that I do have a right to control. And he gets into that place and understand he didn't really get it and he doesn't want to get it. You'll know, just live it out and see if the pattern continues, and it will, and you still change your pattern. This isn't okay with me, and see if he can correct again his pattern. And that begins to develop new patterns. If not, then you'll know. All right. How can I stop fixating on my marriage? I just ruminated this all the time. Things I wish I could say. Plus, I'm preparing to have the talk with him. And I just run it over and over and over and over in my mind. So Diana, you're the expert on rumination. So here to go.
Well, it is painful. I think that's one of the things about being in a destructive relationship or a difficult place in a relationship or even a hard situation is we think about it and our mind plays tricks on us as if we're going to think about it 24/7. We're going to come up with a solution. And I think that, again, grabbing control of your thoughts, choosing to actually, I have a situation right now that I'm dealing with where I found myself consistently trying to problem solve for a friend. And I went to the Word of God and I, whatsoever things are beautiful, right, true, rehearsing scripture is very, very helpful for stopping ruminating. You have to grab a hold of the story that you're telling yourself in your head and choose to narrate differently according to the truth. Your brain is on this remote cycle where it thinks it's going to solve it, and it's a constant chatter. And so there are many, many ways to step out of rumination. I would say the first thing is, when I started rehearsing that scripture this week, I felt calm inside. And the other thing along with rumination is trying to decide what I really can control and what I can't control and telling myself the truth about that. So in my situation, I was really obsessing over and praying for a friend and the outcome, but I had no say so in that outcome for her, right? I didn't have the agency. So, telling myself the truth, I can't take control of what happens here, A, B, and C, but what I can do is I can pray for her. And so putting myself in the right parameter, and, I can't change my partner. And so understanding that I can pray for my husband, I can't make choices. It's not my job to reach out to him and continually try to help him get it. It's just not going to happen. And so really telling myself the truth about what I can do and grabbing control of those thoughts.
And I would say there's one other piece that might help you, because it seems like marriage has become your, like, I have to be married or I will die. It's become your idol. It's become, I have to save my marriage or I will die. I have to get my husband to get it or I will die. I have to convince him to change or I will die. And I'm being a little dramatic here, but you get what I'm saying, is that our marriage has become the penultimate of our life. And God has never put marriage in that place. You did. You did. And we do as women. And we're groomed to as Christian women. Like, oh, the ideal Christian woman is a woman who's married and gets to homeschool her kids and gets to have this wonderful life. That's not the only life that God has for women. And it's not the only life that God has for you. And marriage is important, but it's not the most important. And I think you've made it the most important goal in your life. How do I save my marriage? How do I get a marriage? How do I get this marriage to work? How do I get my husband to change? That's not what you're supposed to be focusing on right now. Okay. So I would say, put your marriage in its proper place and focus on you. and your relationship with God. How is this marriage impacting me? How is it causing me to sin? How is it causing me to feel crazy inside because I can't control him? How am I not trusting God with my life and my own growth? So I had a garden in my house in Pennsylvania, and I had some flowers that I planted in the wrong spot. And I would always use them as illustrations for my counselees because they would have to walk through the garden to get to my office. And these flowers, instead of growing like this, like flowers grow, like up straight, they would grow like this because they were planted under a overhang that I had on my garage. And I didn't think about that at the time, but they got no direct sun. So they were like, ooh, you know. And I think of that as women, like we're to be planted to be God-centered women. We're to be firmly planted like a tree, firmly planted, Psalm 1 says, that we're to be God-centered women, that we're to find our nourishment and our strength from God. He tells me who I am, and that's what I believe. But instead, we've become husband-centered women. And we're leaning into husbands saying, you've got to love me. You've got to value me. You've got to listen to me. You've got to understand me. And then they don't. I mean, it's wonderful if they do. But when they don't, we collapse because we have no nourishment. And so I would say perhaps right now, something would help you is just to confess that and to repent of that and say, God, I want to be a God-centered woman. And I don't want to have marriage and the saving of my marriage is my penultimate goal, because then I might be grasping at things that are not mine to control. What if I just said, Lord, I'm going to be the wisest, most mature woman that you can make me be in this marriage. And if my husband doesn't want to partner with me, I'm going to accept that and let him go. That I can't make a marriage with a man who wants to function like a child. Children aren't supposed to be married. Right? And so I can't make him grow. Only you can help him grow, and only if he wants to. Guess what, ladies? God doesn't change anybody who doesn't want to be changed. And so if he has no heart to grow and mature as a man, to be a man and not function as an adolescent child, you can't fix that. And so Diana was right. Pick what you can control. You, God, and you can't control God, but your relationship with him, do that work. And then he'll give you the wisdom to handle what's going on out there with him.
You know, Leslie, I think there's a truth. And the truth is that we were created for God. I know he created man and woman to walk this life out together, but ultimately our satisfaction is found in him alone. I think the older that I get, the more I recognize that all of these things will not satisfy. And they become a tool of the enemy when we fix on them.
Yes.
Like if I just had this, or if it was just that story that I want, it's going to bring me contentment and satisfaction. And that's a lie.
Right. If only I have this, then my heart will be satisfied. I just read in Proverbs, we've been studying in our Conquer group Proverbs this month, and desire is never satisfied. Desire, once you get one desire satisfied, you want 50 more things. You know how kids are. Mom, just buy me an iPhone. If I get an iPhone for Christmas, I won't want anything else the rest of my life. Yeah, right. You buy him the iPhone, and 2 weeks later, he's got to have earphones. He's got to have something else to go with that iPhone or a computer, whatever. It's desire is never satisfied. And so be careful, because I think that when we have these desires out here, there's nothing wrong with that, but understand they're not going to satisfy. They temporarily satisfy, but then we want something else. And so be careful with that. And so I would just encourage you to take your obsession and just say, I'm going to lay it down at your feet, Lord. I don't know whether my marriage is going to make it or not. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to learn how to be a mature, godly person in this marriage, including speaking the truth in love, including exposing the unfruitful deeds of darkness, including being my husband's helpmate, which may be calling him out on some things that are destructive to not only me, but to him, to give him an opportunity. Like if your husband had a black mole growing on the back of his neck, wouldn't you call it out and say, oh, honey, you've got something on the back of your neck? You wouldn't hesitate to tell him, but you can't get him to go to the doctor, right? He has to want to get rid of that. He has to face his own ugly, hard truth that he might have cancer, right? You can't drag him by the ear to the doctor. All you can do is speak out what you see. This is destructive. This is harmful. get help, whether it's his alcoholism or his porn addiction or his lying or his anger or his way he treats you. This isn't okay. That's your job as a helpmate. Oh, but what if he leaves me? Then you're too marriage centered. And you're too marriage centered. I'm not saying be cruel about it. Faithful are the wounds of a friend.
Yeah.
Right? That's how we are to be in marriage. We're to be each other's best friend, that I can make comments that will help you be a better person if you listen. And if you choose not to listen, I can't make you a better person. Same with our kids, really, right? So, all right. How do you handle being called names when you're feeling those intense emotions of rage and pain? Someone's calling you names.
I think of a book I read called Known. And in the first chapter, it was about names that we've been called that are not the truth. And I looked over at my life and I think, well, what are the names that I picked up along the way, unintentionally, or maybe sometimes people had called me that, and deliberately and decidedly chose to put an X on those. And then wrote down the names that God has called me. And so I think in those moments we cling to truth, right? We have to remind her, first we have to get to calm and settle our heart and our mind, but I always like the term, you don't get to call me out of my name.
Yeah, and you don't get to define me. I think that's the mental shift that doesn't mean they're not going to call you names. I mean, they called Jesus names. They called him crazy, they called him demon possessed, and they called him a fraud. So it's not like we get through life without being called names. I remember some really hard times when my mother was saying things about me that were very untrue and very hurtful. And it's hard to not react in those moments and just fling a few stones right back, right? That's not God's way. It's tempting. And if you look at that over the years, what's the result? It just turns into a big, ugly fight. And it's not positive and it's not productive. So I would encourage you that the best you can when that happens and someone's calling you names, that you actually go silent. That you might be feeling all kinds of feelings. You might be, wanting to punch them in the nose or vomit out some names yourself, but you just go silent and you just say in your head and get out of there, or say in your head, they don't get to define me. They don't get to define me. They don't get to decide who I am. And so you're going to have to counter those names because your reaction to them shows you're believing them, right? Or that you're fighting against them. But you can fight against them with the Lord and say, that's not who I am. Jesus didn't contradict the names he was being called. He didn't say, I'm not the demon possessed. He didn't even argue with them about that. He just knew who he was. He knew who he was. It'd be sort of like someone saying to me, Leslie Vernick, I know who you are. You're really a man. You're just dressing up as a woman. I'm like, no, I know who I am. That wouldn't bother me that someone said that. I know who you are. You're not really a Christian. And I'm like, no, I know who I am. Or you're just a liar. And people say that. They say, oh, you're just destroying marriages. Those kind of, people will say what they're going to say. And if they can get you to react and look ugly, it sort of proves a little bit of what they're saying. And so I think it's on your watch to exercise restraint and good boundaries. So who says you have to stay there and listen to them? You don't. You can get up and walk away or hang up the phone or turn off the computer or not respond to the text and block it. You can do those things. And then go to your quiet space and say, is there any truth to what they've said? That might be one thing. And second, they don't get the power to define me. Why would I let a human being have that much power over me?
Yeah.
Right. I hope that helps. I am a pastor's wife, 57 years old. We have been ministering in Phoenix for 22 years now. And I'm right there. 6 years ago, I discovered my husband is a covert narcissist. You can imagine the suffering, especially seeing the congregation now is getting less and less. It's hard losing the people. I love them. Still have a good relationship with them. They're in a different church now. My question is, how do I process the situation? Sitting nicely at church while he preaches is not easy for me. Yeah, I imagine it's not. And I would encourage you to join Conquer. I'm going to tell you that right out because we have an amazing Conquer support group right in the Phoenix area that does support one another pretty well. And it's pretty hard as a pastor's wife to find women you can trust with this story. So I would really encourage you to get on this workshop, sign up for this workshop, and then get the invitation to join Conquer for that support, because you cannot do this all by yourself. And I don't know how you are in conversations with your husband, but usually covert narcissists are very good at silencing you through their. Diana actually is an expert in covert narcissism. So why don't you answer that a little?
Well, I think the most important thing that you suggested is they can make you feel so crazy, and really your internal sense of what's reality can be called into question. You're going to feel very alone because everyone else thinks they're wonderful, but usually you're the only one that sees that at home. And that's why it's really important that you get some validity for what you're experiencing, and that you learn about these behaviors, and that you're not alone. And I think that's what you had suggested is you need a support group of individuals who understand what it's like, because it takes a toll on you. It'll take a toll on you emotionally, spiritually, and physically, unless you get some support. And if you've been in it for a long time. And so I can only imagine, the need for support and for understanding. And I think specifically validation, you need terms for what's happening to you, so that you can say that's what it is. Because in the middle of it, there's such cognitive dissonance, and it does physically affect you. So yeah.
Yeah, we're getting a little bit of interest in the chat about how to join Conquer. So Conquer's only open twice a year because we have so many women who need this help that we kind of love on them for 6 months before we open it again and do that and really mentor them and help them get on their feet. So Conquer will open again April 13th. You can go to my website at leslievernick.com and go through the quick start guide to see if you're in a destructive marriage. At the end of all of that, it'll say you can join the wait list to be on Conquer. That's Charbert, that's probably what you did to get on the wait list, so that those people who are waiting to join Conquer will be given the opportunity to do that a little bit before the workshop. They can open up those doors so they can start getting in right away. But I would encourage you to attend the workshop. And somebody also gave some feedback on the feed that the workshop link is hard to read. I'm not sure why. They said there's apparently the text of what we're saying is going on there too, so it's hard to read. So let me say it out loud again. So if you want to find out more about our organization at Leslie Vernick and Company or Co., just go to leslievernick.com. leslievernick.com. All right, that's my website. You can get the quick start guide. You can join the Conquer waitlist. Those are things that you can do. But if you want to attend the workshop, which we're talking about, which is going to be April 13th, and it's going to be 2 times, once at noon Eastern time and once at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. And I will be giving a full 1 hour PowerPoint slides, in-depth workshop on this stuff. How long do I keep trying, and how will I know his change is real? To give you that wisdom and that information to make good choices for yourself. And you don't have to join Conquer. Just come to the workshop. That's free. At the end, we'll give you an invitation if you'd like to join Conquer, if you fit that criteria of the people that we only allow to join. If you fit that criteria, then you can join. And first of all, we only allow women in Conquer, so that's the first major criteria. And women of faith, because you're interested in those things, and that's what we talk about. So then you'll be invited to join Conquer if you'd like to do that. But if you want to join the workshop, the link for that, if it's hard to read on the screen, is leslievernick.com, same as my website. And then just put a / there, and then just one word, join workshop. Join workshop after that. leslievernick.com / join workshop, one word. And then that'll take you to a link where you can sign up for the workshop. It doesn't sign you up for Conquer. It's absolutely free. You can attend the workshop and be a part of that experience. And that will help clarify things a lot for you.
Leslie?
Yeah.
I want to thank you for having me. I've got to run.
Okay.
So
Diana, thank you so much. I appreciate you. And I'm sorry we went a little bit late. I know that you're on more schedule time than me, but thank you. Okay. Bye-bye.
Have a good day.
All right, I'm going to go a little longer because I have not scheduled my week this week. I'm in a different location. I have a house in the Sun City West area in a retirement community, and I have a house a little north of that in the mountains, which we go to when it's 120 degrees in Phoenix. So I'm at that house now in Prescott. And so it's a little cooler, but I don't have a schedule, so I can stay a little bit longer if you want to stay. And so let me just go to some other questions. My husband has really respected my boundaries. I learned them from me. Thank you. He's gotten help on his own. I'm struggling to know how to let go of some of my boundaries. This past month, he's been working hard and I see a difference. But I have almost 2 decades of hurt. Do I move emotionally closer to him because of what he's doing now and plan to work on past hurts in the future? I don't know that I can answer that specifically for you because I don't know the details of what the hurts have been and all of that. But I think you can move emotionally closer if you want to, with good boundaries. They just might be different boundaries. So maybe your boundaries have been, we don't sleep in the same bedroom, we're not having sex, we're, not sharing finances. I don't know what your boundaries are right now as he's going through this season of change, but it might be that we do go on a date night once a week or once a month. And that we have conversations, that we practice some of the things. So there's some really good books on marriage conversations, like Conversation Starters, which are pretty non-threatening and non-confrontational, because sometimes when you have these conversations, it's about touchy topics that stir both of your emotions. So you can buy one of those books and say, hey, let's have a first step of having conversations. Let's just open the book and pick a page, and it'll say, oh, what's your favorite childhood memory? And so that's a conversation that you have, and then you share it and he shares it. So then that's a conversation that you practice listening, you practice emotional validation, and you see if you can have better connections that one night a week. That might be a start versus sleeping with each other again already. Maybe that's too big of a step because you're not ready for that, but you could take a small step forward, having a dinner together once in a while, sharing a bill that you share together, that you decide to make a purchase, and maybe it hasn't been faithful with finances. And then you can see he is faithful with paying his part of the bill. And maybe it's not a great big bill like a house. It's a little bill, not even a car. Maybe it's a little bill like a vacation or a home repair, something like that. So I think you can take smaller steps to see how we work together and how we can say, ouch, or stop, or don't, or I don't like that, or that really feels good, or that doesn't feel good, and how we receive that in more neutral ways versus the hot topics that you still probably have to work through. And you may actually need some professional help to work through some of the hotter topics once you get ready to do that. But at least you can start building some smaller levels of trust and safety in smaller levels of emotional connection, and see how that goes. And that will give you information, right, to whether you want to go to the next step or not. All right. Let me just say something about boundaries, because we've gotten a couple questions about boundaries, especially like what are healthy boundaries to have regarding an addiction, the gambling addiction, alcohol addiction. And let me just say a couple things about boundaries. My good friend, Lisa Turkhurst, who is a good supporter of Conquer, she would highly recommend that you join, is written a great book, Good Boundaries, Goodbyes. And it's an excellent book on setting boundaries, but you only can set boundaries on yourself. You can't control another person. So when we talk about boundaries, it's not about saying how much you can drink or how much you can spend or how much you can do. Boundaries are really about your safety and stewarding yourself. It's also about defining yourself. So we set a boundary by, this is okay with me, this is not okay with me. This is what I can live with, this is what I can't live with. This is what I'm willing to do, this is what I'm not willing to do. Not you have to, you have to, you have to. That's not a boundary. That's a control. You're trying to control another person, and that's not healthy for them or for you as two adults, right? And so let me just give a very clear example that may not apply to every situation, but let's say you're friends or you're married to a smoker, okay? And you don't like that he smokes, but you can't put a boundary around his smoking. That's not your job to do that. Just like you can't put a boundary about someone's bathroom habits or someone, that's their stuff to do, right? So or overeating, you can't put a boundary on someone overeating. You can't eat that. That would be controlling and demeaning. They're an adult. They get to decide how healthy they're going to be. So your husband's a smoker, or he's drinking too much, or whatever he's doing that you don't like, drives too fast. You can't put a boundary on that. What you can do is you can ask yourself, what bothers me about that? So if someone's a smoker, what bothers me about that is I don't want to get secondhand smoke. What bothers me about that is it sort of stinks. I don't like kissing people who have smoke breath. What bothers me about that is, he might get cancer. Can't control that, but I can decide I better make sure that my life insurance is intact and I'm able to be employed if he should get cancer and die, because I might have to earn the money in this family, right? So it's being wise with hard reality. I can't change you. I can only deal with me. So boundaries around smoking. Hey, when you smoke, I'm not going to kiss you unless you brush your teeth. That's up to you whether you want to brush your teeth or not. Can't control you. Ella can control me, but I can control. I'm not letting my lips touch your lips if you haven't brushed your teeth, right? That would be a boundary. Or, hey, and this can't really be a boundary because you don't have total say in your house, but a boundary request would be, I really don't want secondhand smoke in the house. If you decide to smoke, I promise you I won't nag you about it. I won't talk about it, but could you smoke outside? Because I don't want it in the house. I don't want it in my furniture. I don't want it in my clothes. I don't want the kids smelling it. Would you please smoke outside? So that's kind of a request, not a boundary, because you can't really enforce that if they say no. But you can say, hey, you can't smoke in my car. I won't let you smoke in my car. My car is my car. I want it smoke-free. I won't drive in your car because it smells like smoke. Those are my boundaries. So those would be boundaries that you set on what you're willing to do and what you're not willing to do with someone who's doing something that you might not like, right? It's not you can't, but I won't. I don't. I can't. That's not good for me. Okay. All right. How do I communicate the fact that my husband has all-consuming work projects and I can't get undistracted time from them for issues we need to work on together? How about just saying, can we have a 3-minute conversation? Be very specific because he's got all-consuming work projects. And to say, you are a hard worker, so you're going to try to say it with the good about it. You are a hard worker, and I so appreciate you getting all this stuff done, wherever it is, if you can say that genuinely. So you don't want to just come out with bad, but there's good stuff about that quality, right? You're getting a payoff of having a finished house. A lot of women don't. A lot of projects done, all that. Or maybe they're outside work projects. So you have a busy job, you have a heavy responsibility, you're at work, 50, 60, 70, 80 hours a week. And I don't know how you manage it all, but it's affecting our relationship. And I want to talk with you about that for 3 minutes. Okay, and then pick your topic for 3 minutes. It's a long time. So for 3 minutes to talk about how you feel with someone just listening. So I feel like it's affecting our marriage. We never have time to talk about important things. Things are going on with the kids. Things are going on with our finances. Things are going on with my health that you have no idea about because I never can get your undivided attention. I have your undivided attention right now for 3 minutes, but it's been months since we had a conversation. And I don't really think that's a marriage. That's not the kind of marriage I want. So you want to talk about what you need, what you feel, what you notice versus what he's doing wrong, and how bad he is, right? When you're trying to have a constructive conversation with someone, you really want to talk about you versus them. My problem is I need more time together. What I like is having at least one day a week that we touch base and talk about issues that we might need to clean up. Just like we clean up our house once a week. If we left our garbage out and didn't take it out twice a week, our house would be awful. We've got garbage in our life that we haven't taken out, we haven't talked about, and that's just piling up, and I'm not liking it. It's affecting our relationship. So instead of criticizing or critiquing his decisions to work so long, if there's some benefit to you, you can say that, finances are no problem. You work so many hours, but our relationship is suffering, at least on my side. And say it, have it, but keep the topic very specific, prepare, plan, practice, and give him a time. I'm not saying it has to be 3 minutes. It could be 10 minutes, but keep it short so he can do it. Because if you say, hey, let's sit down and talk, he might be thinking, I've got a million things to do. I don't have time right now. But if you say, I only want 5 minutes. Can I have 5 minutes tonight? He can usually do. If he can't give you that, then that's a more serious issue. Okay. So keep it very time limited and prepare what you want to say in that amount of time and see how he takes it. If he takes it, he hears it, he's humble, he's willing to work with you, then plan the next conversation. All right. If he bristles at 3 minutes, why would you want to subject yourself to an hour of that? All right. Then you know what your next step is. Ladies, if there's one thing I can tell you right now, when things are hard, to do nothing doesn't help you, right? I mean, you might be in a collapsed state of emotion right now. And so you are doing something. You're feeling your emotions and you're processing them. That's something. But to just stay frozen in action or not processing something or not moving forward doesn't help you. But moving forward, so I'm going to just give another very easy illustration. Not everything is this easy. Okay, I feel a lump on my breast. Oh my gosh, that's hard. Oh, my mind is racing. Oh my gosh, I wonder if it's cancer. Well, what's my next step? I better schedule a mammogram. I better schedule an appointment with a doctor. Right? Now, I might not like the news I get, but if I just do nothing, it's not solving the problem. Right? So let's go to the doctor. I go to the doctor. We get a mammogram. Yeah, I have more serious problems. I've got breast cancer. I didn't want to know that, but it's important for me to know that. So if you have this conversation with your husband and he doesn't want to talk to you and he doesn't care, it's important for you to know that, as hard as it is. It's important. It gives you information that helps you make your next steps. Oh my gosh, he's totally not interested. I'm the maid, I'm the wife, I'm the sex partner. He really doesn't want to have a relationship with me. I don't matter. I'm like the object, the cell phone in his life that takes care of all of his needs, but he doesn't really want to have a relationship with me. I don't matter. As long as I function, my feelings aren't important to him. Well, that's a wake-up call for you. That's important information. As painful as it is, just like finding out you have breast cancer, is hard truth. How do I face the hard truth? By moving forward, by doing the next step. All right, what do I need to do about breast cancer? What are my options? What are my choices? I need to face that and take those options. Does that mean I'm going to be dead in 2 years? I don't know that, but I need to take my options. What does it mean when I confront my husband? What does it mean when I go forward and, say I'm not willing to live? Does it mean he's going to leave me? Does it mean, well, I don't know that. It might mean he says, thank you for waking my eyes up, right? Thank you for not putting up with my crap anymore, right? You don't know what's going to happen. It's not likely, but it could. In fact, the women that we work with in Conquer have shared with us, as well as plenty of other women that we worked with. Plenty have gotten divorced, so I'm not saying it's the norm, but plenty have said it was only until I wasn't willing to do it the same way anymore that my husband finally realized that he was going to lose our marriage if he didn't start to mature, right? Which is God's will for him, but he has to want it. But sometimes it works for them to act like a child if you're going to be the caregiver and the caregiver and the caregiver and the caregiver and do everything he wants and accommodate his dysfunction. But is that a good wife? Does a good wife willingly accommodate her husband's dysfunction that's going to destroy him, her, their marriage, and their kids? Not in my Bible, and not in yours either. So that's just a little side talk, sorry. All right. What if you discovered that your husband sent $700 last month on Amazon gift cards? When you confronted him, responded, they were for online gifts, which the truth is he's paying women online to send live nude videos. If he continues to spend the money, would it ever be okay to tell him I am changing my paychecks to go to another account? Absolutely. And I think you have some other issues. If this is your husband who's paying women to send him live videos of them naked, how are you feeling about that? At least in my marriage, that would not be okay with me. And it would not be okay for him to spend $700 of our money doing that. So you definitely need some boundaries about what you're willing to put up with and what you're not willing to put up with. And what he decides to do with that will decide the future of your marriage, right? But definitely take your money out of there as a first step. Hey, this isn't okay with me. And I'm not willing to be okay with this. So you've got some tough heart ahead, but keep moving forward. Small steps, but it will clarify where your next steps need to be. Okay. It's so hard for me to open my mouth, be honest, speak to him about patterns of behavior or behavior. My mind goes blank or I get paralyzed. Trying to stay well, he seems to be more self-correcting and less controlling, but there are occasional blow-ups that leave me feeling beat up again. How do I deal with someone who cannot take any criticism or correction? I was gone too long doing my hobby, and this is what triggered him, so feel somewhat responsible. When I try to set a boundary about his tone and unreason, you can't set a boundary on his tone, hon. You just can't. If there's something I can communicate to you, you cannot set a boundary on someone else. So you can say, please stop, but that's not a boundary. That's a request. All right. A boundary is, I'm not listening to this anymore. And you get up and you walk out. That's a boundary. When you talk to me in that tone, I'm not staying. Goodbye. And you walk out of the room. You get in your car, you do what you put your earphones in, what you need to do to stop the conversation. That's what you can control. You cannot control how he talks to you. When you say, I'm not willing to have a conversation with you about this, when you're screaming and cursing at me, that's your boundary. Then he decides, oh, do I want to have a conversation with her about this? Well, then I'm going to have to stop screaming and cursing, or she's going to leave. That's your boundary. And when he doesn't choose to stop and you don't set your boundary and implement it, he knows it doesn't even matter. So that's when you get up and you say, conversation's over on my end. I'm not willing to do this anymore. That's a boundary. And you learn all this in Conquer. We'll teach you how to do some of this. Got hundreds of videos, hundreds of ways to help you learn how to do some of this. So having a tough conversation with someone is hard work. And I encourage you not to do it off the cuff. I mean, I've written books. I write, rewrite, and still I'll send it to someone and I'll say, I'm not sure what you're saying, right? And so communication is hard. So when you're having a tough conversation with someone, make sure you plan and prepare it so that it's saying what you want it to say the best you know how, right? So don't put that on yourself to just be like natural with it. Work at it so that you can really say what you want to say. And if you can't even have the courage to say it out loud, then you might have to say it in writing. Hey, I've written some things that I'd like to share with you, and read it, or give it to him and let him read it while you're sitting there, so that you're communicating what you need to communicate to him in the best possible way, because you do want him to hear you. You don't want him just to reject it because you're being all critical and snarky. So prepare and plan what you want to say and say it well. But let me say this as well. There's some people who do not want to change. The Bible, if you read the book of Proverbs, calls them fools, and they don't want to listen, and they don't want to hear, and they don't want to change, and they don't want any correction, and they don't want any feedback, and they will just beat you up for doing it. And if you are married to that kind of person, or you live with that kind of person, or your parents are that kind of person, don't keep knocking yourself out trying to get them to listen. The Bible, Jesus tells you not to. He says in Matthew chapter 7, he says, first of all, stop judging. So don't think yourself better than other people. Don't judge them as, oh, you're this and I'm better than you. We're all a mess and we all have problems. We all have work to do, right? Be aware of that, right? So don't be so self-righteous that you think you're the right one and they're the wrong one all the time. And before you have a conversation with someone, take the log out of your own eye. Now that you're self-aware that you have some stuff in you and you're not so self-righteous, right? That's the maturity part. Take the log out of your eye. And not that you shouldn't talk to them, but before you talk to them. So do your own work. And then last, he says, and don't throw your pearls before swine, because they will just turn on you and trample you. So Jesus is saying reality is that some people just don't want to listen. And so don't give your pearls, don't share your precious feelings and your thoughts to people who are going to turn around and trash you. If you've got a pattern of that kind of person in your life, you have to let go versus, I just need them to understand. No, you don't need them to understand. And if you do, you have to stop needing that, because they're not going to give it to you. And you have to mature enough to say, I accept you don't want to understand. You will never understand. And so therefore, I'm not casting my pearls before you anymore. So I don't know where you are in all of that, but those are the things that we will teach you, not in the workshop, but later in Conquer if you decide to join. But those are just freebies. Jesus tells you, don't keep talking to someone who doesn't want to hear you. Don't keep trying when someone doesn't want to try. Let it go. And Jesus demonstrated that with Judas. And he demonstrated that even with the rich young ruler. If you read the story in Luke 19, I believe, it says, he says, what do I need to do to have a relationship with God? And Jesus tells him, and he says, no, I don't really want to do that. He says, okay. He didn't say, oh, well, let's change the rules here. You can do this or do this. He goes, no, it's okay. And the rich young ruler left, and Jesus loved him and let him go. How do we do that? We got to be strong and mature in Christ and not be so focused on, I need you to love me in order for me to be okay. All right, so I hope that's helpful. And I think this is really a very good statement to say. Divorcing a destructive husband is hard. So the marriage is hard. Divorce is hard. There is no easy path here. Hard. Which choice do you make, right? It's both hard. I struggle with wobbling because at times I don't want this divorce. I know what's best. I signed a prenup under distress 2 weeks. Makes me sick. 2 weeks before my wedding. I believe signing my right away had him feeling he was well insulated to act in destructive, drunken behaviors because he thought I would never leave. We recently had the summary disposition, and I was granted in favor of the prenup. And it was granted in favor of the prenup, not I. My soon-to-be ex-husband is over the moon from this hearing. This decision leaves him with all the cars, the house, the business, and basically having me leave with only the clothes on my back. He is now going after equalized parenting time when he was never a 50-50 parent, let alone a 90-10 parent. And this scares me, as I view it unfair. I'm having a hard time wondering why God is allowing this to happen. I feel God is pushing me to rebuild. But how do I stop focusing on all of his sins and the justice system for what he has done? Okay, so I don't know you, and I am so sorry that maybe I know you, but I don't know that I know you, and I'm so sorry for what you're going through. But I'm going to tell you some tough truth right now. All right, so you weren't strong enough to let go of him at the beginning and say, I am not signing this prenup this way. Maybe a prenup might be appropriate in certain instances, but make sure you go over it with a lawyer and it gives you something at the end. You signed a prenup with nothing at the end. So you weren't strong enough to not do that because somehow you were living in la la land, that he would, what? Understand that when someone pressures you under distress to sign a prenup, they're already not a good person. All right. So you signed it and you're mad at God because you signed it, because this is what the outcome is now. You got what you signed for. Right. And I get that. I have done stupid things. I have done stupid things under duress, under my immaturity, under being afraid. I have done them too. So I'm with you, sister. And I call it stupid tax. I have paid stupid tax because I wasn't strong enough. I wasn't mature enough. I wasn't wise enough. I wasn't brave enough to do what I knew I needed to do because I was afraid. So if you keep making that kind of decision, so now I'm afraid of this, I'm afraid of this. So now you're, kind of like a billiard ball going back and forth of not deciding how you want to be, who you want to be, and how you want to show up. So I would really encourage you to get some time with yourself and with God and just say, all right, I'm mad at you because I didn't grow up fast enough not to pay that stupid tax. Now I'm paying that stupid tax. But I want to grow up now. I want to be strong. I want to be bold. I want to be wise. Lord, put me on the fast track for that. Help me to be wise here. Help me to surround myself with wise others. That's what the Bible says. When you go to war in Proverbs, make sure you have plenty of advisors. That's why we love Concord, because some of you do go to war and you've got an army of wise sisters by your side. We have a book in Concord on how to find the right attorney, all the kinds of things that you might need for this war. And so it's really important right now that you steward you so that you can steward your children well. My guess is he doesn't want 50-50. He wants it because it hurts you. It causes you to give him more of something he wants, even the energy of a narcissistic supply. And so I would encourage you, not knowing any of the details, that you read up on how narcissists use the children to hurt you with parental alienation. I don't know how old the children are. I would encourage you to do your own work so that you stop reacting in front of him, because he uses all that against you, and he will, and learn those tools so that you don't make it, again, another stupid tax that you have to pay because you didn't know, because you weren't given the wisdom that you needed, that you didn't ask for help when you got the prenup. I bet you didn't go to a lawyer and say, is this a good prenup for me to sign? You should have done that. You didn't do that. All right. Because either you were so in love or you were scared to, not because he would have called off the wedding, which would have been the best gift you could have gotten. But you didn't get that because you were scared. And so I have been there too. I'm probably twice as old as you. I have paid my fair share of stupid tax. And I have seen it happen over and over again. I don't want you to have to keep paying it. So right now, if you keep boomeranging around with fear, you're probably going to make the same mistakes in different ways that you made the first time when you signed that prenup. So I'm just really putting it out there to you. Don't go that way. Find a different way. Get some wise counsel, whether it's I'm not sure from your church, you can get that right now on this because they don't like divorce. They can't seem to see their way through the trees of this kind of stuff. But get some wise counsel, attend the workshop, consider joining Conquer. Consider getting some other, go to a domestic violence organization and get some free support there for how to stay strong when you're being pressured by this unjust system. And we do have an unjust system. We do have an unjust system. And, you know, if you read Proverbs, I would just encourage you to take the book of Proverbs as a study guide for you through this time, because it talks a lot about how much God hates when the wicked are let go and the innocent are framed for being guilty, how much God hates injustice. God hates injustice, but we have it in a wicked world. We live in a wicked world, and we live in still a pretty patriarchal society where men have more power than women, and the person who has the most money wins. And that is hard reality, but it is reality. And when you're fighting against that, it's like David and Goliath. And you're right, many times we don't win. So you need to be smart about your strategy, and you need to get some wisdom about your strategy. And I don't know all the ins and outs to give you any of that right now, but you need to be smart about that. One woman that I would recommend, I've not met her, but I've heard good things about her and her ministry, or not ministry, I don't know if she's even a Christian, but it's called One Woman's Battle. Tina Swithmore, I think. You can probably find her book on Amazon. She fought the legal system with her narcissistic husband, you know, with custody and all that. And she gives you a lot of wisdom about that. So you might want to look up her materials and see if you can find some information there. All right. I'm so sorry that you're going through all this, but now you've got to gird your loins up, and you've got to pray for spiritual guidance and protection, and then do battle, not in a legal way, but spiritual ways for your mindset to stay strong and clear so that you don't cave under this stuff again. All right. Okay. My heart is getting my heart and mind to accept what I'm going through. I have wonderful Christian friends who have been very honest with me since I've opened up with them. They say the same things to me while guiding me and encouraging me. Why am I struggling so much to accept this? It's black and white. But I'm still so afraid I'm going to make the wrong decision. I need to do this and move on and not stay stuck. So here's the deal. What are you so afraid of in the wrong decision? Like, I don't know if the wrong decision is divorce and that's the wrong decision, or I stay married and that's the wrong decision. So let's not look at the outcome. Okay, let's not look at the outcome. Let's just make a decision. The Bible tells you, I will instruct you and guide you in the way you should go. I will counsel you with my eye upon you, in Psalm 32:8. In Proverbs 20, let's see, I think I put my Bible here so I could look at it. In Proverbs 20, and I used this verse yesterday too. I love this verse. So we don't make God's will's decisions like in a big chunk. We make it step by step. And if we're making the wrong step, we trust that God will show us and we can redirect. Proverbs 20 says this. Proverbs 20:24 says, the Lord directs our steps. So why try to understand everything along the way? That's freeing, isn't it? You don't have to understand everything along the way. So if you trust in him, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Don't lean on your own understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. Proverbs 3:5-6. This is Proverbs 20:24. Psalm 32:8. I will instruct you and guide you in the way you should go. I will counsel you with my eye upon you. We walk by faith, not by sight. All right. So what does that look like? What does that look like? It looks like Esther, Queen Esther, who was scared to death about approaching the king. She didn't know what the outcome would be. She just said, I don't know what to do. My people are going to die, and I got to talk to the king about this. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. And I'm not even allowed to go into his presence unless he summons me. What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And she said, pray. That's my first step. Everybody else pray. That's their step. We did that. Now what? Okay. I think I'm going to have to go ask the king. I think I'm going to have to go into his presence and ask him to what? I can't tell him about Haman right now. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? What am I going to do? Oh, I think I'll just ask him to dinner. Okay, I can do that, but I'm still not supposed to go into his presence. What do I do? What do I do? I think I'll just go to his presence. If I die, I die. She didn't know the outcome. She just took the next right step that she was being led to take. She goes into the presence of God, into the presence of her king. Is the sepulcher going to go up, or is it going to go down? Is she going to live? Is she going to die? She doesn't know. She just does what she's supposed to do, the next right step. And She didn't die. Vashti took the right step and she did get banished, put in jail. So it doesn't mean everything is always rosy for you when you take the right step. And then she's with the king at the dinner and she's thinking, I don't think I should say something right now. She takes the next right step and he says, what do you want, dear queen? She goes, I want you to come to dinner tomorrow. She doesn't know what's going to happen. And even when she tells the king, she doesn't know whether he's going to side with Haman or he's going to side with her. She doesn't know. This is the paralysis that we get into as Christian women, is somehow we have to know the outcome. Like if I take the step toward divorce, and I have some resistance, that's a bad decision, I should go. We don't know that. And so I just trust God that if you are asking him for his wisdom and you are walking in his ways, he will show you information that helps you take the next step. We talked about God's will yesterday. And we talked about God's will. Watch the video of Facebook for yesterday. We talked about how do you know you're in God's will. And we tend to have a very Americanized version of God's will. I'm in God's will if it goes well. And if it goes wrong or something bad happened, it must not have been God's will. Well, John the Baptist spoke out and he ended up getting his head chopped off. So shouldn't he have spoken out? Elijah prayed for rain in Mount Carmel and it came down and licked up the fire, and Jezebel and Ahab still wanted to kill him. Was that not God's will? So don't look at, it has to go well for God's will. This is God's will. And I'm not going to go into the whole teaching I did yesterday, but watch it. If you are learning to be who God calls you to be, mature, learning to speak the truth in love, learning to love your enemy, learning to uncover the unfruitful deeds of darkness, learning to be like Christ, and you are doing the things God tells you to do, not be overcome with evil, but overcome evil with good, pray without ceasing, forgive, love, speak the truth in love, do the things that God calls you to do, then you are in God's will. And whether or not it turns out for your personal comfort may be a whole different question, right? God will grow you through the steps you take, even if the circumstances themselves are tough. That's why facing the truth when the truth is ugly and hard can be good for you, because you will develop strength of character and become the person God calls you to be in the midst of hard, if you want to. So stop letting fear decide. Stop letting fear decide. Those policemen yesterday that ran into that building when they heard shooters, and the shooter was shooting at them when they ran into the building and ran upstairs. Do you think for a minute they didn't feel afraid? Of course they did. And they didn't know the outcome. They didn't know whether they were going to be able to shoot the shooter or the shooter was going to shoot them. They didn't know. They just did the right thing. Whereas in the other scene where the policeman just hung around in the halls, they didn't do the right thing, right? And so I think we live too much by fear, and God calls us perfect love casts out fear. Learn to walk in faith, and God will show you the next right step and the next right step. So it doesn't mean you don't have any fear. It means you put your brave on, which is a virtue. I want to be brave, while you still feel a little fear or a lot of fear, and you do what you need to do, which is the right next step forward, whatever that is. And that will help you clarify things. Okay. So we are way over our 1 hour. We're heading up to the 2 hour mark, and I've got some other things I've got to do. I don't have appointments, but I do have some other obligations that I have. Like I have to write a blog that's due tomorrow and I haven't written it yet. So I've got to go and do that. But tomorrow we are going to meet again. Has this been helpful? Give us some feedback if this has been helpful, if this has been too long, if this has been not long enough. This is kind of what the workshop is going to be like, where I'm going to just be hanging out with you after the workshop to answer your questions. And you see, I do get specific. I can't specifically answer it in every situation specifically, but I'm trying to get really biblically specific so that you see how wise God's word is in relationships, in taking the next step, in dealing with fear, and helping us to grow into becoming the woman that God called you to be. And that is my mission, to help all women everywhere to not live small and afraid, but to live bold and brave and courageously, which is what God calls us to. The woman of Proverbs is described as a woman of valor, of strength, and dignity. She had a life outside of her marriage. She was a person of purpose, and she had a good marriage. But she didn't live small and under the thumb of her husband. That wasn't a biblical marriage. It was an oppressive one. And I want to help women learn what God says is for them, and not just die to yourself, become a cell phone, and just become a role, the role of a wife, the role of a mom, the role of a sex object. That's not your place. Your place is to be a person, a robust, fully developed, mature person. And I aim to help you do that if you're willing. All right. So tomorrow's workshop is going to be on, I'm sorry I didn't get to every question. You asked a lot of them. I got to, how many of you have been guilty of this playing the blame game? It's your fault I did that. It's your fault I acted that way. It's your fault I said that. It's your fault I feel this way. Me. So we're going to be talking about the blame game versus sharing or taking responsibility. What's the difference? This is tricky because taking responsibility doesn't mean taking fault. It doesn't mean saying, well, you're at fault or I'm at fault. What does taking responsibility mean? And I'm going to share a verse in Proverbs tomorrow that will help you understand what that means. All right. So I thank you for hanging out with me, and I will see you tomorrow, same time. We actually have two Facebook Lives tomorrow. Tomorrow at noon Eastern time. And then I think we have another Facebook Live at 4 p.m. or 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. But I'll let you know about that one tomorrow. So I'll be doing 2 tomorrow in preparation for our workshop that's coming up really, really soon. And we hope you sign up for it. And if you know a woman who needs to know about this, the workshop, please could you just let her know about that so that she can come too? It's open to all women. All right. Take care. God bless. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.